Hey YouTube, what's going on? It's Adam with Retro Repairs here, and I got another video where I'm going to try and repair some old stuff. So here I've got two Gameboy Color devices, which I bought off eBay. They cost about $6 each, and the issue I'm having with them is they just don't power on. So to show an example, my own working one with good batteries and a working cartridge seems to load up no problem. So using that same game and those same batteries, if I try and get into one of these, and flip the power on, I got absolutely nothing. No light, no screen, nothing. Oh, there it kind of just flickered on for just a second there. So this could be a number of things. It could be a bad fuse. A lot of times it turns out that it's this switch here that needs to be opened up and cleaned. So I'm going to show you how to go about doing that and try and revive your old Game Boy if you're running into these same issues. So in order to get into this, you need a tri-wing screwdriver. So I happen to have one that's a little bigger than I had hoped, but I think it will do the trick for this. And there are 4 screws that you have to remove. 1, 2, 3, and 4. At the bottom there doesn't appear to be anything holding it in. So, yeah, it's just grabbing, which is perfect. Okay, so I just put down a little towel here because we were getting a fair bit of glare coming back from the lights, so hopefully that's a little easier to see. So now that those screws are removed, we have to get the shell apart, and the shell, I believe, just kind of snaps together. So you got to get in here and just pry it apart, being careful not to crack anything. Oh, there are 2 more screws right here. One there and one there. And I've just noticed, you see these battery terminals are pretty corroded. So that also could be causing a problem there. So what I'm going to do for that, before I really go too much further, just get a little bit of sandpaper and sand down the inside of the terminal. And maybe that's even all that we really need to get a solid connection going again. So I'm going to try those batteries one more time, and let's see if that makes any bit of a difference. And what do we know? It powered on right away. So let's try a game in there. It looks like we're in action, so turns out that the switch wasn't the problem, it was just these battery terminals. So I'm still going to open this up because I want to give those a much more thorough cleaning and get that corrosion off. So again, we have to remove those 2 screws down here. So these ones are a little more difficult to access. Hopefully I can get them out. There we go. Okay, so I got those screws removed, and so now this should just come apart pretty easily, and it does. So here is the piece of switch that fell out, and it just sits in place, I think right here. And then these are the terminals that we're going to look at. So this is one side of the battery terminal, and the other one kind of detaches into the shell itself. So see if we can get that to pop out. Might need a finer screwdriver to get that out. I'm not sure if this will really come out or not, but either way, this one I want to give just a bit of a clean up to. So I'm going to use my, being careful not to rip it off the board, just going to use my sandpaper and sand away all the contacts here. So what I'm using for this is 1500 grit sandpaper. It's actually designed for automotive use, so for kind of finishing up a paint job on a car. So this way it doesn't take a ton of metal off this, it just kind of really buffs it out. And then I'm also going to just take some alcohol and wipe down the terminal here. So 99% isopropyl alcohol on a Q-tip. Just wipe it down to really get as much off as you can. You hear my dogs fighting in the back. That's what they do now. And then this other one, same thing. So I really can't seem to get it out of here. I've tried pushing it that way. I've tried pushing it this way. Yeah, no go. So I'm just going to have to also wipe it down with the alcohol here, just to try and clean up that contact. So I think that's about as good as I'm going to get that. So looking at the rest of the board, there doesn't really seem to be any other issues. This is the switch that I was telling you about. And on some of these, you can actually desolder the top and clean out the inside of that switch if it's starting to get tarnished or just not working. But that doesn't really seem to be the issue here. The issue was it just wasn't getting a contact from the battery. So I'm going to put this back, and we're going to try it right now. So put the game in, put a battery in, and no, don't have power. There we go. So I want it to turn on every time. So I'm just going to try replace the batteries. Going to make sure I hold this together so it's getting a good connection, and power on, no power. So it's still not getting a great read off. Still kind of flaky. So we might have to look at that switch as well. So I think we're going to do that right now. Okay, so as I mentioned before, this is the switch right here that we're going to try and take off here. So what I need first is my soldering iron. There we go. So I get my soldering iron and a pair of tweezers. And I'm just going to try and desolder this side of the leg here. While lifting it up. So I've never tried this, but it's going to be kind of a tricky process of getting in there, I guess. Okay, so it's kind of tricky to get off. There's not really a good way to get under it, but I've desoldered this pad enough that I can lift this tab up a little bit off the pad. And from there, I have to kind of work it until I can get the cover of this off. So you have to be careful because you don't want to break the switch. Let's try and focus that a bit better. There. So we don't want to break the switch, but it needs to come off. So I just have to kind of carefully work at it. There we go. So now the first half of that is lifted. Now I have to do the same for the second half. So again, grabbing my soldering iron, just going to heat up the solder here. And lift it right off. So this was the part here, and all that is really a cover. It doesn't do anything, it just holds everything in place. So I can put that aside. But under here is the actual switch itself. So when we lift this part up, there's some metal contacts here, some metal down here, and as you can kind of see, it looks like that metal's all tarnished and not very nice looking. It should be pretty shiny. So what I'm going to do is, using my sandpaper again, just get a small bit and tweezers and just kind of rub down the inside of that. The point is, we just kind of want to restore some of that shine. I'm not sure if you can pick that up, but where I've scraped already, you can see with the light, it's a little bit more reflective. So we want to keep doing that. There are 6 different areas where metal needs to be contacted. So I want to try and get this as nice looking as possible. Can even just use my tweezers straight on it. So as you can see there, it's already starting to look a fair bit better. So I'm just going to kind of keep on that. Just try and scrape up any of this corrosion or oxidization that's appeared here. Then again, using a bit of alcohol on a Q-tip, just kind of douse that, get it wet, and lift up whatever I can. So there we have it. That's all nicely cleaned up. And I'm going to let that dry a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing to the underside of this. So the switch here, I need to make sure that these contacts are working. So again, all I'm going to do is just kind of rub it on this sandpaper here. And also hit it with the alcohol. And then lastly, what I want to do is, using my tweezers, just gently pry up each of these prongs just a little bit, so that I'm making sure that it's getting good contact with that pad. There we go. So now we reassemble. So to do so, we have to put the slider back into place. And then we need to put the cover into place. So the cover, I believe it goes with these notches, are going to be facing out. I actually need to go back and verify on the video. So I've verified the notches on this cover go in, not out. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to quickly lay down a little bit of solder on each of these pads. So get my iron. There we go. So again, anytime you're doing soldering, you just have to be very careful that you're not bridging any of these components. So not getting any solder on anything else, basically. If you do, you could very easily fry something on here, which we don't want to do. So now, I'm going to use my tweezers and try and get this back into place. So just kind of lay it there. push it down. And then while applying some pressure, just heat up that solder blob again. Crap. Missed it. There we go. And same thing for the other side. So applying some pressure down, heat up the solder blob, and it should snap into place. There we go. So let's just switch it, make sure that it is moving. Looking at the side of the switch, it looks like it's pretty flush and in place, and carefully looking, I don't see any solder bridging any connections. So I'm going to put the back on it carefully. Zoom out a little bit. So back is on, battery's in, and oops, I forgot to put the actual switch slide part in. So let's try power on. Power on. Seems to work great. I want to make sure it actually boots into the game now. I haven't screwed anything else up, but there we go. Game Freak. It looks like we're good. I'm going to try it a bunch of times, make sure that every single time that power light comes on. And it looks like it does. So I would say this Game Boy's fixed. So before we get too carried away, we just need to put the screws back in. Also, before I do that, I want to give it a little bit of a cleanup. On the inside here, there's a little bit of leftover corrosion bits. Since this is a clear case, you can see that through the outside. So I'm going to brush that up quickly with some alcohol and a Q-tip. I'll be right back. Okay, so I've given that a bit of a cleanup. Now we just do reassembly. So put the back on. We want to make sure that the contacts for the battery pop through the shell at the appropriate place. And then it's a matter of 6 screws. So 1, 2, 3, 4, whoops, that one's in backwards. And 5 and 6. So I'll be right back once those are in. Alright, so got all 6 screws in. And again, just one final test with everything put in. And where's the back cover? There it is. There we go. So that was how to repair a Game Boy Color with no power. So we tackled kind of 2 of those issues. One was the corroded battery terminals, and the second was a flaky switch. Both of those weren't overly difficult to repair. The switch does require a little bit of soldering, so you need to have the soldering iron to do that, but otherwise a pretty easy fix. So for $6, again, I got myself another fully working Game Boy Color. I'm going to tackle that other Game Boy Color in a separate video, so this doesn't get too long. But thanks a lot for watching, and I hope this was helpful in anyone out there with trying to restore their old Game Boy Color. So thanks a lot for watching. Subscribe to my channel, see more of my stuff, and be sure to like the video if you liked it, of course, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.